Hi students, welcome again to Reedy's Geometry. This is section 1-4, and what we're talking about today is something a lot of students find difficult. It's called proof, all right? And a proof really is just an argument. It's like a step-by-step logical, if this is true, then that is true, and if this is true, then that is true, and if that's true, then this has to be true. And with each statement, there has to be some reason why you can say that that's true. That's all a proof is. We're going to start doing proofs with algebra. We've been learning all of these properties, and what the properties are, the properties of equality, the commutative property, the associative property, transitive, all of those are going to be the reasons, all right, why we can do what we do. And since we're going to be doing algebra proofs, we're actually solving equations. We start with algebra in here because that's something that most students that are in a geometry course have had some experience with. You've either had Algebra 1 or you've at least in pre-algebra solved enough equations that you've seen algebra before. You know what to do basically to get x by itself. All we're doing is step by step getting x by itself, but we're showing reasons why we can do each step. That's what we're going to start with. And in this assignment, section 1-4, they're going to give you reasons. Well, they're going to give you the statements, and then they're going to give you the reasons to go with them, but they're going to leave one reason out, and then you have to provide that. That's what you have to do. Just as kind of a side note here, honestly, many of the things that you learn in geometry and algebra, those direct skills you may not need the rest of your life, especially Algebra 2. Now, if you're going to be an engineer, or if you're going to do something in, say, agriculture or construction, you may use a lot of the geometry stuff that we teach. But there will be stuff in these math courses that you will never use directly. And then you ask, well, why do we do them? And here's why. Because the goal of education, and this course in particular, is not to teach you what to think, but to teach you how to think. And there's good thinking and there's bad thinking. Proof, analyzing arguments and providing reasons, is a good way to sort of give your brain a workout on the right ways of thinking. We do it with algebra. Later on, we'll do it with geometry. And sometimes we'll do it just with any old statement. And that's called logic. And we'll do a little bit of that in here too. But we want you to come away from this course understanding right ways of thinking. You're going to use that right ways of thinking in decision making with your relationships, with your job, with what school to go to, with whether or not to enlist in the military. All kinds of decisions that you make in your life. You definitely really need proper thinking on that. And so we're basically teaching logic here. So this is important. All right. So we've learned all the properties. So I'm just going to go ahead and start working examples. And I'm going to start with number 11 from section 1-4 worksheet and work it as an example. In this example, you are given that 4x plus 4 equals x plus 2. They've got to start you somewhere, so that's where they start you, with this equation. And so that is your first statement. That's your first step. And what's the reason? Your first reason will always be given, because that's what they gave us to start with. Now, how do I get reason number 2? Well, we started off with 4x plus 4 equals x plus 2. And then we went to 3x plus 4 equals 2, and the question is, just like our assignment for section 1-3, from this equation to that equation, what'd they do? What property did they use? Well, here it was 4x and it went down to 3x, and there it was x and it went down to, well, there isn't an x there. So what'd they do to both sides of the equation? They subtracted x, the amount x, from both sides of the equation. So this should be subtraction property of equality. That's the reason that they could do that step. Now, on your problems, you could stop right there. You filled in the one blank they gave you. But just to get our minds thinking and to help you on the rest of this assignment, I'm going to go ahead and work through the rest of these. Now, from number 2 to number 3, they said 3x plus 4 equals 2, and then 3x equals negative 2. Look at the left-hand side of this equation and the left-hand side of that equation. What did they do? Well, they got rid of this 4. How do you do that? Well, you subtract 4, right? Did I subtract 4 from the other side? Is it true that 2 minus 4 is negative 2? Yeah. So since I subtracted 4 from both sides of the equation, then the reason for that step, again, will be subtraction property of equality. All right, now I have it down to 3x equals negative 2. And from the old algebra days, what do we do to solve for x? It's being multiplied by 3, so what do I have to do to both sides? Divide by 3. The 3 would cancel over here. I just have x. And this is negative 2 divided by 3. What says you can divide both sides of the equation by the same thing? The division property of equality. And since we're solved for x, we're done. Okay, on to number 14. Again, 14 says, given 3x minus 5 equals 5x plus 5. That's where they're going to start us. So that is our first statement. And the reason for that is given. That's what they gave us. All right, from that step, 3x minus 5 equals 5x plus 5. How did they go to negative 2x minus 5 equals 5? Look at the left side of these equations here. It went from 3x to negative 2x, but the negative 5 stayed the same. And on the right side, they had a 5x there, and now it's not there anymore, but the 5 is still there. Looks like they subtracted something from both sides, and what was it? Well, if they got rid of this 5x, that's what it was, 5x. They subtracted 5x from both sides. What says you can subtract the same amount from both sides? The subtraction property of equality. So that's our reason for number 2. Number 3, they went from negative 2x minus 5 equals 5 to negative 2x equals 10. They got rid of that minus 5. How do you get rid of a minus 5? You add 5 to both sides. All right? 5 plus 5 made 10 over here, and when they added 5 over here, it just canceled out the negative 5. Why can you add the same thing to both sides of an equation? Addition property of equality. All right, negative 2x equals 10, and then they went to x equals negative 5. What did they do to both sides? Well, they divided, because the negative 2 is being multiplied by the x. They divided both sides by negative 2. So what's my reason? What says I can divide both sides of an equation by the same thing? The division property of equality. Yeah. So that's what I'm going to put in here. Division property of equality. Guess I didn't circle my answer up here, but all right, those are proofs and providing reasons. Now, in future sections, we're going to just be given something, and we'll have to provide all the statements and reasons. But this gives you a little bit of practice just following the logic of the proof. Go ahead and work on the assignment, and we'll see you next time.